Hey everybody, this is Chris Murphy and Patrick Soukup here with Fort Collins Fellas. We wanted to do this episode, and it's specifically about how to win a deal in this market. And the market we're talking about is Northern Colorado. So, Patrick's coming at it from the real estate agent side. I'm coming at it from the lending side. But we're just going to go over some of the things that we're seeing right now in this market. Here we are in February, March of 2022, and inventory is an issue. Rates are going up. And these are the things that we're kind of trying to tell our clients to give them a leg up and try to get under contract, really. And so, Patrick, I'm going to let you start out a little bit. I've got my things, and we'll just kind of, let's just dive right into it. So.
No, definitely. And this is a crazy time because one of the questions that, some of my clients will ask me when we submit an offer is, do you think this is a good offer? And when continually we are above list price, offering these tools and tips to secure a deal, I feel like, I tell them this, I feel like I'd be an asshole if I said this was anything but a great offer. It just depends on if there is somebody else putting in a crazier, stronger offer that might work with them and their goals. So one of the things that I've been sending to my clients is these different tools and tactics that I have used. And I tell them, I said, we don't have to use all of them, but more than likely we will have to use some of them depending on the strength of the property and the aggressiveness of other buyers. Because the first tool that I definitely suggest is for the agent, the buyer's agent, to call the listing agent to see what the activity is on the home. If the offer deadline, if there is one, is it hard, or are the sellers reviewing them as they come in? Because that's going to kind of dictate how I'm going to compose and strategize with my buyers to put an offer in. Because if they're reviewing them as they come in, the speed to offer is the strategy. If they are hard on their deadline of Sunday at 5 o'clock, you don't want to become that high watermark that the agent is then going to use to tell other agents, hey, we've got 5 offers, one of them is at X. And all of a sudden, if you dropped that offer too early, you're the X, and all somebody has to do is do X plus 1,000, and they become the ability to win that deal. So
can agents do that, by the way? Can agents, they can say, hey, we got an offer. If it's listed at 550, we got an offer at 575 right now.
It is the Wild West as far as how listing agents are dealing with communication of the offers on the property. They should ultimately be dictated by what information the owner wants disclosed, because ultimately that listing agent should be an advocate and a fiduciary of that seller. So that seller should be dictating, and that listing agent should be detailing different options for them. But really, honestly, unfortunately, what I've seen is, listing agents doing it one way or another, and probably not even talking about it with their clients, what they're doing. So number one, you got to have a conversation with that listing agent. That's my first tip.
And I, from the lending side, I always will go to my buyer's agent and be like, let me know if you want me to call this listing agent. Mm-hmm. And that kind of ties into some of the things on the lending side that I wanted to mention. Obviously, this goes without saying, but you got to get pre-approved, not pre-qualified. You got to get pre-approved. And what I'm doing, and you should talk to your lender, whoever you're working with, is get your file into underwriting, get it underwritten. And have your team start working through these conditions. So when the time comes that you are putting in an offer and they ask you, hey, can you call this listing agent? And they go, they're always funny, like, hey, have you confirmed their income, their assets? I'm like, no, I think they're pretty, no. It's like, I always get these questions. I'm like, of course, everything has been confirmed. And then you can say, listen, they're already through underwriting. And if we want to order a rush appraisal and we want to close this thing in 2 weeks, we can do that. So I think that's something that I'm doing with a lot of my clients right now on the buy side, is getting everything collected. And it kind of goes back to, if you're a buyer right now, it's like, don't go on Zillow, don't go on Redfin, Realtor.com, because you're going to find the house of your dreams. Most likely it's already off the market anyways. It's not even going to be available. Get everything done ahead of time. And one of the things I tell everybody is most issues are assets. They're moving money all over the place, and it just causes way more of a headache. And then they're like, oh, this is such a pain in the butt. Why does the underwriter need these things? And it's like, listen, if you just get your money together, I think come back to just having a game plan. And I always figure, like, if I can sit in the room with the real estate agent, the clients, myself, and we said, all right, here's our game plan. Those always seem to be the smoothest transactions because there's no, oh, I thought you said this, or I thought you said that. Everybody knows exactly what they got to do in terms of getting this thing going. But I would say, yeah, just ask your underwriter, get into underwriting as soon as possible. And
I think that helped the deal that we just did. Honestly, when I talked with the listing agent, when we submitted on our clients over on Matthews,
yeah.
and the listing agent knowing that our clients were already through underwriting was potentially there. I think they had 3 offers. That, I believe, was the differentiating factor, was that, hey, lending is basically tied up. I know Chris as a lender and know that group, and I feel comfortable doing this deal, which I'm sure maybe, ties into one of your next tips.
Yeah, I was just like, knowing the agents and everything like that is big, and working with local people.
Yeah.
And Patrick, like, if you're a listing agent right now and you get 10 offers that come in, and 8 out of the 10, let's just say, for the sake of just comparing apples to apples, of like, 8 out of the 10 are all local lenders and the other 2 are Chase and Wells Fargo. I mean, I have a hard time saying that you're going to even look at those.
Yeah, Chase and Wells Fargo. I mean, I've done deals with my buyers with those banks and lending institutions as the lender, and it gets done. It is just annoying. And generally speaking, the sellers are probably a listing agent are only going to go with that offer if they are only offers on the table. Because if there is a deal with somebody that I know is going to be the buyer's advocate, like you can be, like you can push specifically. When my buyer has a question or concern, they call you and say, hey, Chris, what do I need to do? How do I need to work it? Rather than calling 1-800 Wells Fargo,
right,
waiting online, and, oh, this is loan number 127642. Why don't you get patched through to somebody who has no idea who you are, no idea about the deal, no idea about Northern Colorado, and you're just hoping for the best.
And like, I'll tell people too that call me up, and I don't necessarily work. I mean, I don't win every deal that gets presented my way, but the one thing I always tell people is, I go, find somebody on the ground. You know where my office is. Here's my cell phone number. You're not going to work with a bunch of different loan offers, because at the end of the day, the listing agents and the sellers, they just want that security blanket. And if you happen to have, I've been lucky enough to do enough deals where I've got to know a lot of these agents, so I can call them up on their cell phone and just be like, hey man, I'm representing the buyers on your property, yada, yada, yada. They're in great shape. Let me know if you have any questions. And so that, if you're a buyer out there, that's a huge, especially if you're coming from out of state, or you're just, you're not too familiar. You don't have any friends that say, hey, you got to call up my real estate agent. That person's great. Do that research and find somebody local. One other thing that we want to touch base on is the appraisal gaps.
Yeah.
Because nobody is winning an offer at list price right now. And I will, from the lending side, this is how it works. And I always kind of explain it. If you have a house that's listed for $500,000 and you win the offer at $525,000, but the appraisal comes back in at $500,000, you need to bring an extra $25,000 to the table to fill that gap. So what's happening is, if I have a borrower that, say, has, I don't know, $100,000, maybe we structure the deal where it's just like, hey, you put 10% down, 50 grand, you hold on to that other 50 grand as just your leverage to try to win this deal, to cover any appraisal gaps. Because the reality is, nobody is winning any offers right now at list price. And so I always tell people is to protect the lender and the borrower, and we always go off the lesser of those two amounts. So if the house goes on, you get it for 525 or 550, and the appraisal comes in at 575, you're golden. You're walking into equity. But Patrick, how are you having those conversations with your buyers about appraisal gaps?
Yeah, no, which kind of leads me into, I'm going to rattle off some different tools and tricks as far as on the agent and representative side, which top of the line is, you've got to have a cleanly written contract. Don't be submitting a contract, which you as a buyer would have no clue what a contract's supposed to look like. But that's where hopefully you've done your research. You're working with an active, very active agent and lender in this community, or in this real estate market, because it's so dynamic that you need to have it done. So you need to have a very, very clean contract that the listing agent feels comfortable that they're working with somebody competent on the other side. which then leads me into kind of this laundry list of, I literally send this to my buyers, Chris, of here are some tools and tricks that I use to secure contracts. You don't necessarily have to use all of them. More than likely, we will use some of them. But based off the conversation that I have with the listing agent, we will employ some of these strategies to try to secure this contract. So I'm just going to start rattling them.
Cool. Fire away.
Obviously, first and foremost, highest price, generally speaking, is going to be one of the main drivers, decision factors for the seller. So you've got to be able to at least be close or compete on that. From there, depending on what the goals of the seller, do they want a closing in 30 days, a post occupancy in 60 days because their kids are graduating in May and they just want to be in the house, no stress, but they want to get the money in their pocket. You need to know that. Or are they just really dreadful of this really extended contract and they want the money in their pocket? That's why we're seeing cash deals, winning. But also, if you are a finance deal, like you said, a rushed appraisal close in 2 weeks, 2 weeks to 21 days is very doable with the finance offer, which is really the only advantage, not only, but one of the few advantages that cash has over lending. So if you can have a close, tight timeline closing, you're not really missing out on if they're competing against cash. So a quick timeline or an extended timeline with the post occupancy, depending on what that listing agent says. Appraisal gap, just like you said, unfortunately, we are in a time where houses are going over list, generally speaking, the majority, if not all of the time. And I think I counted it up the other day. I've had 32 offers and only one of those offers have had to actually employ that appraisal gap. I've had properties that are appraising, but it gets a little dicey. The one that did not appraise, we knew it was not going to appraise because this was our dream home for a client. And like, we don't care. We're basically throwing the kitchen sink at it and we will get it. And they were basically qualified enough buyers with a significant amount of money in their pocket that no amount of money would have mattered.
Yeah.
They were getting this house.
Real quick on that, I have a program that will tell you how long it'll take for you to recoup that price. So if you offer $25,000, how long, based on the historical appreciation, will that come back? And it's actually amazing. Sometimes it's only like 10 months. And so I'll tell that to buyers. I'm like, I know you're going way over, but based on historical numbers, you're only going to have to wait maybe 10 months to a year to have that home come back. So back to your list, but I just want to throw that in.
No, that's great. Honestly, is because fortunately we are in an appreciating market, and if you can maintain, if that mortgage works for you, then who cares if your timeline's 5 to 10 years, you're going to have that equity. So from there, an escalation clause, this is something that kind of hedges your downside or upside risk on offering. I'm going to offer, the house is listed at $550,000. I'm going to offer $560 with an escalation clause up to $580, escalating $2,000 over the next highest number. I've had a couple of deals where I have not had to employ that escalation clause. My clients were totally, completely ready and willing to go up to 580, but we closed the deal at 560. So that's awesome. Is a tool to hedge your upside risk. This one is something to where I don't talk to too many clients about this, but earnest money going hard. Colorado is a very buyer-friendly state, pretty much for any reason, anytime, so long as you're within your dates and deadlines in the contract. You can terminate the contract and your earnest money will be returned to you in full. But that's where that risk on a seller's standpoint from this long extended contract of it falling through, they lose their earnest money, then they're back on the market. It's got kind of a red flag. Well, you could decide, hey, do I want $1,000 of my earnest money to go hard, half of it, all of it, or none of it? And you could detail that in the contract saying, after our inspection objection, 50% of our earnest money will be non-refundable due to the seller. And that provides the seller, hey, at least if we're going to risk it 10 days, we're going to get $2,500 out of it no matter what.
Gotcha.
And, from there, the last little tool I've used, and this obviously depends on your situation as a professional and the conversations you've had with your buyer, is either one, having your buyer pay a fraction of your commission and crediting that back to the seller on, if the seller's offering, let's just use easy round numbers. Seller's offering $15,000 commission, $500,000, 3%. So $15,000 commission. You offer to credit back to the seller, let's just say $2,500. And your buyer is willing to pay you on your buyer agreement $2,500, or a half a percentage point based off of whatever deal, or just purely giving up that $2,500 to secure a deal, because hey, we're in a crazy market. The value is still there. Fortunately, if you do enough deals, giving up $2,500 to secure, a contract has in fact worked for me. We just closed a deal literally yesterday where it was a doctor of psychology on the seller side. We were not the highest offer. It was an $800,000 deal. So I was making a significant amount of money and I credited back $2,500. Still made a good amount of money on the deal. And it was what basically separated us from, we weren't even the best offer price-wise. We were the second highest, but got the deal done because of the psychology behind that. So those are my tips and tools that I tell all my clients.
Well, I think this is great. And listen, I think the biggest thing is communication and understanding the game plan, especially for first-time home buyers. I make it pretty much mandatory to come into my office and meet with me. And if I can do it with the agent, even better. So, Patrick, that's awesome. Thank you so much. We hope everybody got a little bit out of this, and good luck out there in this market.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.